Hello everyone, and welcome to Celebrating Cinema. We're back for our 10th episode. How are you doing?
Yay, we're back.
Yay, we're back!
The excitement is unreal.
Yes, I'm doing good. How are you doing, Elliot?
I'm doing great. Tom?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Happy to be back.
A bit jealous of Hugo, who's in Venice, doing his usual film critiquing.
Film critic.
As he likes to tell us. How was your summer, Kiriko? What did you get up to?
My summer was amazing. I went all over Europe. What did I see in terms of films? There was a Rossellini retrospective in Paris. So I was basically on vacation again at the cinema, the only place where I felt at home. It was wonderful. And then I saw Godzilla vs. Kong because Hugo recommended that very specifically to all of us.
Was it worth it?
It was totally worth it. I had a great experience.
And Tom? A summer of films.
A summer of films, yeah. It was great being back at our own cinema and at cinemas in general. I saw quite a number of films in the cinema as well. I finally saw some pre-releases again. I saw the new Paul Schrader film, for instance. I saw Juliette Ducournau's Titan last weekend. That was quite the impact.
What an experience.
Absolutely, yeah. I really loved it, but it's bonkers. And sort of tying into our discussion today, I saw a film that I expected very little of, it being the reboot of The Suicide Squad, this time directed by James Gunn, which I really liked. Didn't see that one coming at all.
I'm still unconvinced. I won't watch it. Have you seen it, Kiriko?
No.
Not your cup of
so
tea.
Hugo can make you watch Kong versus...
No, we need to go a little bit more in depth.
All right. It's a film that, for a superhero movie, it's bizarre that James Gunn just does something with that material that makes you feel like it's fun instead of it being slot A and slot B, as many of those Marvel films usually do. And of course, like, the original Suicide Squad flopped horribly and was a terribly, terribly shit film. But the same sort of weird cast of characters, they're all superheroes who have very, very low-grade superpowers. There's a guy who can turn anything into a gun. That's the only thing he can do. Then
That's amazing.
That's amazing, yeah. There's a girl who can control rats.
That's disgusting.
And there's a guy who fires off polka dots.
Wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a guy who can fire off polka dots, and he can do that because he is angry. He's angry at his mom. Everything he sees is his mom.
Oh, damn.
So it's this weird ass. Everything is bizarre about it, and it just brings in this vibe that you usually don't see in these big blockbuster movies.
You've dropped the bombshell there.
Yeah, buzzwords.
Well, Tom's giving it away. We're going to be talking about blockbusters, summer blockbusters. What's the history of them? What's the future of them? And sort of what are our general feelings of blockbusters? Tom, so maybe you can share with us the history. I think dates back to probably the 1970s is where you're picking up from.
Even a bit earlier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's listen.
For over 40 years, movie fans have eagerly awaited the arrival of the summer season, the time when some of Hollywood's most vibrant and imaginative popular films emerge to battle out who will amass the biggest opening weekend. The nature of the so-called summer blockbuster, as well as the time of release, has changed over the years, but most have been broadly appealing movies with a clever, easily understood concept. They have featured some of the most memorable action sequences, beloved characters, and enduring universes created in mostly American cinema. The memories of seeing the Dark Knight battle the Joker, a Tyrannosaurus Rex walk the Earth again, and a high-speed flight down the Death Star's trench will live forever in our minds, as will the sweet taste of copious amounts of popcorn and fizzy drinks. Prior to the 1970s, the summer period was not particularly viewed as an ideal time to release a film, as many cinema goers would be on holidays elsewhere. Through the 1950s and 1960s, studios would release their costly and therefore heavily promoted films in the last 3 months of the year. The term blockbuster had already been used to describe popular Hollywood releases since 1948, but was not associated with any particular time of the year. To make the crucial link between blockbuster and the release before July, something memorable would have to rise from the depths of the ocean.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
With its release on June 20th, 1975, in a then massive 400 theaters and a ubiquitous marketing campaign based around its memorable poster, Steven Spielberg's Jaws grossed over $400 million, becoming the first summer blockbuster. But it would take another film, one set in a galaxy far, far away, to prove to Hollywood that the age of the summer blockbuster had begun: George Lucas's sci-fi epic Star Wars. Many connected to the film were skeptical of its potential for success, and the studio moved the film from its original Christmas 1976 release date to May 1977 because of production delays. The studio didn't see this film as a major blockbuster and thought little of its franchise potential, infamously signing away many of its rights, including merchandising, to Lucas. Once Star Wars was released to incredible response by audiences and widespread support from film critics, the film would change the focus of Hollywood's release schedule and the way they approached contract negotiations so as to emphasize securing the sequel rights to any film that went into production, and to never give up merchandising rights. It was the success of Star Wars and the possibilities of endless sequels and merchandising revenue that spurred the development of many summer blockbusters over the course of the 1980s. Spielberg would dominate the 80s with both the Indiana Jones series and a certain endearing extraterrestrial, but other franchises would also emerge with the cast of the original Star Trek series moving to the silver screen and the arrival of the Ghostbusters. But the biggest hit and game changer would emerge from the darkness of Gotham City. Tim Burton's Batman convinced Hollywood that superhero films that took their source material seriously could become critical and popular successes and also generate massive profits through merchandise and tie-in sales. The same can be said from another blockbuster maestro Spielberg, his 90s dino-sized hit Jurassic Park. The 1993 classic would usher in an era of CGI-heavy summer blockbusters like Independence Day, Man in Black, and the terrible Star Wars prequels. In the 2000s, Batman would return, no doubt due to Hollywood noticing the brand recognition potential of the cloaked vigilante. This time, the comic book materials would be taken under the bat wing of Christopher Nolan. In 2005, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and 2012's The Dark Knight Rises. The immense success of these films would not only kickstart the age of superhero blockbusters and the career of director Christopher Nolan, but it would also lead to the term intelligent blockbuster being associated with the films of the British filmmaker. See Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet for other not always as intelligent or successful examples. Merchandising, sequelization, brand recognition, and franchise potential are key buzzwords in understanding the current climate of summer blockbusters. The seemingly endless stream of superheroes Marvel Studios has been tapping into since 2008's Iron Man has given them a unique position in delivering box office sure shots, reaching its zenith in 2018 with Avengers Endgame and its record-breaking worldwide opening of $1.2 billion. But only a few months after Endgame's April 2019 release, the age of the blockbuster would come to a sudden jarring halt. The COVID-19 pandemic would cause movie theaters to close, and films such as Ghostbusters Afterlife, the new James Bond film No Time to Die, and Denis Villeneuve's June were delayed for over a year. With all the tumultuous events of 2020, the concept of a summer blockbuster could only occasionally drift through our minds like some happy mirage from a pre-pandemic universe. Meanwhile, studios such as Disney and Warner Bros. Have started experimenting with their release schedule, moving from a focus on releasing a film exclusively in theaters to simultaneously releasing said film on their streaming platforms or foregoing a theatrical release altogether. resulting in a mixed bag of underperforming and sometimes easily forgotten films like Marvel's Black Widow or the bizarrely enjoyable big-budget, trauma-inspired gore fest of The Suicide Squad. The question arises if the classic concept of the summer blockbuster can survive without the communal magic of the movie theater. With solid blockbuster potential in the likes of Mission Impossible 7, No Time to Die, and June coming to theaters soon, the coming period might decide the fate of how we interact with this particular brand of popular cinema.
Now we know everything. Dun dun dun, America.
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 Yeah, so the question that arises from the article that I wrote would be, what for you constitutes as a blockbuster?
I have a complicated relationship with Blockbuster.
I am not amazed.
No.
I think what happened was this. I think I saw Mission Impossible on TV when I was too young and then decided, this is not for me. Tom Cruise does this thing. He does it the most in Mission Impossible, the one that I saw when I was like 8 or 10, I don't know, where he has his mouth like half open. That's just the whole film, and he just like looks amazed at everything. And I find that a Blockbuster thing, I guess. People just looking amazed at things.
This is like that. Oh, but that's interesting.
I mean, that's a Spielberg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you say that, because like the Spielberg, what is it called? I mean, you have the Kubrick stare, and then you have the Spielberg face of amazement. I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay,
People looking at stars.
maybe my definition of a blockbuster is not clear yet. It is people on a mission. They often look amazed, and often monsters are involved. And it's a lot of America. Am I right?
Yeah, I'd say it often involves some sort of form of the Odyssey tale.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Alright.
a good one.
The hero's journey, and
Right.
then returning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's just not mine. You know, I have another confession to make. So Godzilla vs. Kong, I think it's the first.
I thought you were gonna say I don't like Homer. I hate the Odyssey.
no. Love the Odyssey. Love the Odyssey.
Just not what Marvel have done to
Let's
it.
clear that out of the way. I
Greek
love
mythology,
Homer.
good. Marvel, bad.
No. I was thinking about this. So I was saying earlier that Godzilla vs. Kong is one of the films that I saw over the summer. And I think it's the first superhero movie that I saw in my life. Yeah.
Godzilla being the superhero?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
That's
No,
insane.
Yeah, I think it is.
Hey, but we can't judge Kiriko over this. I mean, she had the best from her mother, the
Yeah,
best
I mean-
upbringing on a cinephile.
You
You
could
have
also say
avoided.
it was tunnel vision,
Yeah, maybe.
bringing up your
Yeah.
kid with
Wha-
limited options.
Watching Existence.
But would you want her to have been brought up with the whole Marvel hype year after year?
Well, I kind of enjoyed the Godzilla vs. Kong
Okay.
movie, so
Yeah.
maybe my mission and my odyssey is my participation to this podcast and discovering the whole.
A whole nother world of cinema. Tom, what about you? You're definitely more of a lover of blockbusters. So what do you define as a blockbuster, and what makes it so enjoyable for you?
Well, if I look back at my childhood, I saw all the big ones when I was young. So the first 2 DVDs that I've ever bought, and I think I still have one with receipt inside that doesn't have any ink on it. It's so old. Were The Matrix and Gladiator, which I saw in the cinema. I think both. Those constitute as blockbusters. Although when I was young, I don't think I. Of course, when you get older, you start to look at it, as you can hear in the thing that I wrote, a bit more cynical.
Yeah.
Maybe things have also changed in maybe a more cynical way, or maybe that's just my nostalgia talking, where films are very much made to become a blockbuster. But on the other hand, if you look at films like, here he comes again, Christopher Nolan, I always have the feeling that even though those films are made with like huge budgets, they're not necessarily And they are made in a popular way because that's the reason why everybody's constantly explaining everything to everybody. They're a bit different than what the superhero films are, for instance.
Yeah, I'd say even now with superhero films, they like to play into the fact that they're now suddenly self-aware that they're a blockbuster and they're a superhero film, and they sort of there's a lot of nods to the camera. And
In what sense are they self-aware?
so, like Deadpool,
The way you asked that question.
Deadpool very much plays on all the cliches of a superhero film, and it will break the fourth wall and talk to the camera a lot of the time. And so you
Groundbreaking.
but they sort of know what they're doing.
Brecht is spinning in his grave.
But yeah, they seem to they're very aware of what they're doing, and sort of they know they're taking your money, but giving you a wink at the same time. Almost, I feel.
Yeah.
Was that still too cynical?
No, I don't think that's too cynical. It's especially true if I want to take it away from the Marvel franchise, but stay in the Disney money. It's especially what Disney is doing with their rehashing of old classics, where all those films like The Lion King, Aladdin with Will Smith not doing any justice to the genie whatsoever, they are very much winking at their own mistakes, but at the same time, they seem to be handling their mistakes, but then also not really. They're doing it in this weird sort of tongue-in-cheek way where it's like, this is just saying, remember that we made this before?
Do you think then that's why they're happier releasing them on streaming platforms simultaneously in cinema?
Well, the most cynical way of looking at it, and I try to not do that too often, is that there are moments, especially in the war between streamers, and for instance, how people look at Netflix and how they produce great films. The cynical way of looking at that is they make Roma and The Irishman, and why is this movie mentioned every podcast? Man. Because they want to get awards, but they're just there for a marketing tool to have you watch more streaming. This is what you could also wonder with the brand recognition thing I discussed earlier for the rehashing of Aladdin. Or it even harks back to the statement by Michael Eisner that I referenced before we started recording this episode, that you don't have any real obligation to make art or statement or whatever. Your obligation is to make money, and while doing that, eventually you'll make art. The funny thing is that for his era of Disney movies, that's completely true.
I can show you the world, shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide?
Well, I think I got my definition of a blockbuster wrong, because you just mentioned Disney, which of course are also all blockbuster films. But then isn't the only element so the only thing that makes a blockbuster is the fact that it makes a lot of money, yeah?
That's where it came from, yeah. And from, we are talking about summer blockbusters mostly. So it came from the situation where Hollywood realized that they could release a film in this period where absolutely nobody else would release a film. And for some reason, the one that kicked that off was Jaws, as I mentioned. That made a lot of money. So I think that would be that would be the definition. But the strange thing is that of course, you can look at it from the other way. Now films are maybe made with the intention of them making a lot of money. And those films might have to be some sort of concept and Elliot said, tell a certain story that will always be interesting, and maybe in the Marvel sense will involve characters that we already know or already seen.
So is there a blockbuster movie that we can think of that doesn't follow the hero's journey?
Thinking about sort of contradictory examples, I immediately thought of Quentin Tarantino. His films they've always felt like American art house films, but that's also a contradiction. But those films, if you look at what the films that he made, bring in, I think Inglourious Basterds is somewhere around 350 million. That's the same thing that big films like The Matrix did when they got released back in the day.
Gorlami. Mi scusi con me? Gorlami.
Ancora una volta.
Gorlami.
So he is like box office fire always. So his films should be seen as blockbusters, even though when we think about Pulp Fiction, we don't necessarily think of that being a blockbuster.
No.
Is there a hero's journey in Pulp Fiction?
I'm trying to think. No.
Think hard. Okay, well then maybe I don't have a complicated relationship with blockbuster movies.
So maybe it's just your interpretation of what that constitutes, I guess.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of prejudice in me
We
when
all
it
have
comes
a lot of
when it
prejudice
comes to
in
the
that sense.
blockbuster. Yeah. What is the best superhero movie that is a blockbuster but also just an amazing time?
I think, oh my God, we're going to talk about Christopher Nolan so much in this episode. I do think The Dark Knight might be the best superhero film.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Tom.
Where do we begin?
A year ago, these cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened?
So what are you proposing?
It's simple. Kill the Batman.
So complicated about the superhero movies is that they all seem to be connected to one another. You need to know the character from one film that came out 20 years ago to sort of understand the development of what he has become now. Like, I feel like I missed the boat and I'm never going to catch the boat ever.
But it's the whole sort of marketing toy, isn't it? Or the marketing strategy. If you
It's
have
like
them all
Harry
linked,
Potter.
you've got
It's
to...
like drugs.
Harry...
They get you hooked. You get you hooked.
It's both.
Yeah.
Harry Potter is sequential, whereas all these superheroes exist in the same universe, and they try and suck you in to make sure you don't miss a
Harry
single.
Potter, another great example of blockbusters.
Yeah, I think that would
And
be...
brand recognition.
No, that was a big hit in the UK.
That's impossible.
Didn't do too badly.
Harry Potter is dead!
Should we talk about sort of how blockbusters have evolved now into these intelligent blockbusters? And maybe it is the right time to sort of dip our toes into Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, and also maybe dip our toes into Denis Villeneuve as well, because of course Dune is coming up.
The outsiders ravage our lands in front of our eyes. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known.
It's interesting, when the trailer was released, I looked at it and I got a bit of goosebumps, because of course the first adaptation was made in 1984, I believe, by David Lynch. Deeply shit film, nice ideas. It's the book that it's based on, a lot of exposition. So you would ask, why is Christopher Nolan not making this film? But it's like a huge, huge book. Now he made this epic, which was postponed during the pandemic. And if you look at Villeneuve's films and if you look at Nolan's films, so they are all like sort of dubbed intelligent blockbusters. Whatever that really means, though.
Yeah, can you sort of maybe elaborate a bit more on sort of why they are also so popular?
The strange thing is that if you dub something an intelligent blockbuster, as Hollywood has done, then that also means that there are dumb blockbusters, which is true. I mean, Fast and the Furious 9, where they go into space.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Prefer over Tenet. Smarter than Tenet. Much more intelligent.
Okay, I think we need to clear something up. There's a lot of shade being thrown at Christopher Nolan, and some people may sort of be surprised at that, perhaps if they've enjoyed some of his films. Why are we throwing so much shade?
Okay, so following, fine. Memento, absolute masterpiece. Prestige, absolute masterpiece. Even like Batman Begins, Dark Knight, great. But somewhere around The Dark Knight Rises, oh, by the way, let me not forget Inception, which is weird that I will say this, because my reason for not liking Christopher Nolan completely drives the dream train through Inception. The thing is that he has a problem where he needs to explain everything away, which also completely doesn't link to his films being intelligent. I'll give an example. In Interstellar, there's this scene where they're flying through space, and I believe Matthew McConaughey he's an astronaut. Everybody knows he's an astronaut. But another guy needs to explain to him how a black hole works. But that's not really him explaining that to Matthew McConaughey. That's him explaining it to us, the audience. Instead of showing it. There's another thing in Interstellar. I have a lot of shade for Interstellar. There's another moment in Interstellar where they pick up the baked potato, aka Matt Damon, on a planet. He steals their ship, flies to his docking station, and you see him trying to dock the ship while he's being pursued by Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. And if there's tense music, and you know it's tense, and he's trying to dock the thing to the thing, but he can't make the thing dock to the thing, and there's tension. So probably something will explode when it doesn't dock correctly. You could just do that and show it going wrong, right?
Exactly.
What does he do? He has Anne Hathaway ask Matthew McConaughey, what happens when he doesn't dock correctly? These are those things that happen constantly in his films, and Tenet is the worst example of that, because he gets so mixed up in his own sort of time-reversed mumbo-jumbo, where he constantly needs to explain everything, because otherwise you have no idea what's going on. That's not necessarily intelligent. I mentioned Inception. Yes, I am aware that if from all the films that he's made, Inception is the one where he constantly needs to explain everything.
Yeah.
But there he's like really building a different world. Okay, please tell me I'm wrong. there I have the feeling that he really needs to do it. Otherwise, you have no idea why Edith Piaf is playing.
But doesn't the irony then become it's an intelligent blockbuster, but he has to be explaining his own intelligence?
Exactly. And what does that say about the term is so wrong, because what does that say about a general movie-going audience who are, I mean, most of the audience going to these films are people who really enjoy popular cinema. Are all those people now dumb? And have they now finally, we have somebody who can talk to the masses by explaining reverse time theory and black holes in these films, and screaming through a time machine to your daughter who's younger, but she's actually older, and like, ugh. Sorry, Kiriko.
I've never seen Kiriko look so angry for all of that.
I agree with most of the things that Tom just said. I just think the man has no fantasy. Like, he decides that for every single film, he's going to talk about one of the things that we as people do not understand. It's either dreams, time, space, stars. What he does, he then comes up with a theory where he has figured it all out, you know? And it's just like astrology or Scientology, where you apply math and formula to things that we don't understand, and then you try to explain according to your own weird religious-esque theory. It's dumb. It's everything but intelligent. You spend a whole film trying to explain the theory behind dreams. Like, man, my dreams are so much more interesting than that.
That's a good point.
Have you ever seen there's this making of clip of him when he's shooting Memento, and somebody asked him to, well, probably nobody asked him, but he does it anyway. He has this whiteboard, and he draws the circle of how it's not a circle. It's not really a circle. It's more like and then there's the black and white material going through. It goes the other way. So
I don't think pictorially, diagrammatically. So, okay, what do you have? You have the beginning of the film here. What's the best way to draw it? The best way to draw it is as a hairpin, like that. That's basically the end of the movie. This stuff is the black and white stuff. This is color. And this is running backwards as a series of jumps. And what we do is we cut between the two the whole way through. So we alternate scene here, scene there, scene there, scene there, scene there, scene there, and they meet towards the end of the film. But then within this, you have flashbacks to a different timeline, which is actually even earlier, somewhere around there.
I think he draws a U-turn with another line going through it, and the way he talks about it is like he's made an absolute time-bending masterpiece which will blow everybody's mind. Well, for Memento, I would say he was a bit right, but just the way he talks about it.
I have this theory. I'm so angry. I have this theory where every single time Christopher Nolan has to come up with a new idea for a film.
Here we go.
I'm so looking forward to the end of this sentence.
He just sticks on it. I don't need to do this seriously.
This is staying in.
Okay, I had this theory where Christopher Nolan, every single time he has to come up with a new idea for a film, he sticks up his arms in the air, and one arm is one arm is time, and the other one is space, and he just crosses them in a new way, or he moves with them, and then he just figures out what his next film is going to be. I swear to God, you can apply this to every single one of his films. It's so upsetting. It's so simple. It's like everything but intelligent. Like, the words needs to be spread. Like, oh man, it's so frustrating.
No, but it's the other way. The other way, you see, when the time is reversed, and then because the time is reversed, you can.
It's literally what he
He will
does.
kill himself, but then he will meet himself in the future because he's a different person than that.
Okay, before we verge on just attacking Christopher Nolan and everything about him.
Let's move to a better example.
Yes, how does Villeneuve
Okay,
sound?
so Villeneuve would be, for me, a far better example of the intelligent blockbuster. He seems to be carving out a very interesting career. The first film that I have ever seen by him was a black and white film called Polytechnique, which we will be screening because when June comes out in September, Lab 111 will be screening a retrospective starting from Polytechnique until his last film was Blade Runner 2049. And in between that, he made very different films. Like Prisoners is very much an old school, what I always call the 20 million drama movie, which they never make anymore, but it's like just actors, not a lot of money.
Why are Villeneuve's films considered blockbusters? Is he making films that then becomes hits, or there's no real sort of formula to what he's...
No, it doesn't look like that. It seems he's making movies that are good, first and foremost, but do seem to have some sort of
Je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi. Is that the same in Canada? His films seem to have very simple but intriguing conceits. As I said with my intro as well, the popular cinema does have to do with simple conceits that a lot of people can understand and that a lot of people can get into.
Which is why Nolan works so well, because it's so easy to...
It's either space or time.
I can't help myself.
Denis Villeneuve does seem to be making films that are, especially if you look at starting from Enemy onwards, these are films that do have a lot of genre in them for some reason. Like Arrival is very much a sort of old school alien invasion movie, but the way he works with that material is so different. Like his main protagonist is a linguist instead of it being a soldier or,
That's cool.
And with Blade Runner 2049, I was really amazed that a film that I loved so much could get a sequel and that it would just make sense. I'm sure not everybody agrees, but I really enjoyed the fact that, so we know the end of that film. Now we have a new film. This is a guy who's clearly a clone or a replicant. What does he have around him? How does he sort of work with that experience? And it has one of the best characters I've seen like in cinema in years, being his girlfriend who's like a hologram, but she wants to become sentient, but she can't. So there has to be a prostitute involved when she has sex with him. Like that's such a sad story.
I want to be real for you.
You are real for me.
You're a special lady here.
But anyways, I'm not sure why his films are intelligent. I guess he
talks about human nature in a way that a lot of blockbusters.
Maybe that's the reason why I dubbed the program Suspicious Minds, because it's very much about characters, very anxious, wary characters looking inside and outside, being confronted with each other, dropped into unfamiliar places. So yeah, maybe that's a good one. It's about a very humane experience.
Maybe it's also not so much the hero story that we follow, or at least the blockbuster hero story that we've been talking about, of a man who's on a mission, but more so a man who's attacked by the world and trying to find a way to survive in
the dog-eat-dog world.
Maybe. I haven't seen many films of.
Arrival is a female leading protagonist.
Sicario as well.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
But with Sicario, I would also. Your point is correct. She is thrown into a world that's horrifically violent and politically incorrect, and
again, Sicario is like a neo-Western.
Yeah. And very much about what is good in a world that is evil, or what is evil in a world that is evil when it comes from a good side.
Yeah. So do you think it is that he's sort of going back into these genres and using a lot of generic elements, but to sort of extract something different?
Yeah, and very much going for a sort of study of identity as well. That's especially in Enemy. I mean, the conceit of Enemy is so wonderful that what if you would look at a random VHS tape, and while looking at that on your TV, you suddenly see an actor who looks exactly like you. What would that do to you?
You don't go to the movies, do you? I don't go out that much.
Yeah, Kiriko, seriously, this is the film you should watch.
I'm very ready to delve into this
I
program.
think maybe your way of looking at blockbusters may once again change when you watch his films, I guess.
Why did you feel it was important to do this retrospective? Because isn't it also one of the first retrospectives of a current director that you've done for a while?
Yeah, in a while, yeah. Because I do think that sometimes, and that's interesting to bring up in this conversation, is that maybe there are also some people who go to our cinema who will look at his films and think they are blockbusters, first and foremost, sort of foregoing the conclusion that actually his films are very much more than that. They're very much thought-provoking, forward-thinking, far more in-depth pieces than they would probably imagine. I could get into the position that people will look at the poster for Blade Runner 2049 and go like, hell no, this is not my cup of tea. If you look at that film, maybe sort of taking out the brand of Blade Runner, or it being a sequel to a classic you once saw, I think you'll be very much amazed about what it brings to the table. And all his films do that. So that's the reason I wanted to show it, especially again, because the thing that he's making now, and which will be released now, is very much a film that is marketed as this huge blockbuster with lots and lots of people running through sand and chasing sandworms. But I hope that June, just as his other films, brings much more than just that huge ass big market experience than Tenet would do.
So my question is then, what will a blockbuster look like going forward with streaming services? Can we still get a blockbuster?
I have the feeling that for something to really become a blockbuster, not just on a monetary basis, but more as a pop cultural basis, like things like Jaws and The Matrix and stuff like that, you do need to have that communal movie theater experience. If they start making Marvel films that are solely released on streaming platforms, like for instance the Black Widow film that they released, they won't.
Black Widow did get
It did get somewhat of a release, in cinemas,
But yeah, sorry.
But then again, it's hard to judge because that film wasn't great. But for something to go down into history as, and even that doesn't really necessarily have to mean it being a big budget film, but for something to go down in history as a classic, I think it's very hard for streaming services to actually do that.
And you, Kiriko?
Oh, it's difficult to say because I'm not very familiar with I'm now a little bit familiar with the history of blockbusters, thanks to Tom. But isn't it that there's more and more non-American filmmakers who are now making like action movies, like the Snowpiercer?
Chloe Zhao making
and
Eternals.
she's making a Marvel film.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just Oscar winners making action hero movies. I think is now a direction that blockbusters are going into, which I don't know, could be interesting.
Yeah, I'm way too cynical for that. I think they're just making that choice to have. I think Chloe Zhao is an exception because they never. I think she already signed her contract for the Eternals when she was making Nomadland, or when Nomadland was suddenly garnering rewards. But I do think that if you look at all the people who are actually directing Marvel films, and I don't want to constantly give so much flack to these superhero movies. Yes, I've seen all of them. So, and I cried at the end of Endgame. Yes, I did. That's funny because you mentioned that you can never go in that train anymore of seeing all those films and then feeling the hype.
Yeah.
You can't. So I'm happy I did it, but that's never going to work anymore.
I figured.
Yeah. I think that they look for directors who are clearly talented, don't have a huge career or a huge body of work yet. They don't have their own name or their own stamp, and they can direct some great scenes, and then 80% of the film will be the exact same shit. And they will be sort of forced into this body of doing those.
That's sad, man.
Yeah, that's my very cynical view on it.
A lot of these directors of these big blockbusters are white male directors. So is perhaps the future giving platform to other directors that might have something new to say to all of this, or some new interpretation?
Well, they are very much trying to do that. It's a good question because Chloe Zhao is, of course, an exponent of them trying to bring a more diverse squad in. Even the film that she's making, The Eternals, is all about characters that I've never heard about, but is an entirely, almost forcefully put together diverse cast. Of course, there's going to be a new Black Panther film. Wakanda Forever, I believe. So they are very much trying to do that.
Yeah.
I think we've discussed this before in another episode, but
briefly with Mulan.
But I do feel that.
But that's more with the cast and representation, whereas here it's more about the people behind the camera that perhaps might be able to change sort of the generic tropes that have sort of become way too formulaic, maybe.
Oh, inside the material itself.
Yeah, their interpretation, their approach to it, offering a different style.
The best superhero movie I've ever seen is Logan, about Wolverine. And that's a film, if you took away the idea that he's an X-Men, or that film is a superhero movie, That's a great Western.
Yeah.
That's James Mangold. Okay, so that doesn't really connect to the we were talking about diversity-wise, but that's a great fucking film. That's subverting or changing that Odyssey hero story, as you mentioned. So it's possible. They just don't do it because it's easier, and I think it's people like the crack to be the same.
Yeah.
The drugs need to be the same as last time.
But perhaps they're going to be forced to now with the whole streaming platform side of distribution.
And maybe they do seem to be forced to because of the discourse around societal issues. But right now, I don't think that those films are a great vehicle for that change, first of all. And I don't feel that even if they try to dip their toes into bringing in a more diverse cast, bringing in different filmmakers, it doesn't seem to be changing the material itself. That just seems to be the same comic book as last time.
True. So maybe wrapping it all up, as our film club choice, what will we take away from watching Arrival?
Okay, so Christopher Nolan puts his hands together with his tattoo, space and time, and they clash. Yeah? Then people around him will be like, what just happened? And then his brother, Jonathan Nolan, who writes most of the scripts, except for Tenet, that's why it sucks, will explain to you what just happened. When Denis Villeneuve puts his hands together with his tattoos, space and time, there's nobody there to explain it to you, but you could just experience it. And that's exactly what he does in Arrival. And it's both beautiful, it's thrilling, it's very strange as well. And I just love that film.
That was powerful.
Yeah. That was good.
That's my god.
That was good. So go buy your tickets for Arrival at lab111.nl or the rest of the Suspicious Mind series or retrospective that Tom's doing. We want to know what you thought of Arrival. So you can leave your review of the film and your thought of this episode in the Apple review section of this podcast. Hopefully you will have already subscribed. Otherwise, you can always write to us at Celebrating Cinema at lab111.nl. Tom will be reading some of your film reviews of Arrival on the show next episode, so please write in, because Tom's got an array of impersonations. Exactly. And check out our website, celebratingcinema.com, for all show notes, where you can find links to all the films that we mentioned that are hopefully being screened here. Kiriko, just to finish, what can we expect for the next episode?
For next episode, we're going to be talking about the Camera Japan Festival, which is held here at Lab 111. And it has a very extensive program of films that are all Japanese. So get ready.
So thank you very much for listening. Until next time.